Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Aladimim in Israel. As we go about our lives, we frequently find ourselves wondering what it is exactly that makes things happen the way that they do. Some of us might be inclined to believe that things happen for no reason whatsoever. This is what we could call the random belief. Others are more religiously inclined and believe that things happen due to some higher plan. This, of course, is the belief in God. Others might reject both of these and insist that some things happen due to human choice and others due to the general scheme known as the rules of nature. This can be called the belief in nature, since human choice, according to this, also follows those same rules. There is nothing to say that these beliefs cannot overlap. For instance, the random people might accept the rules of nature, but insist that there is nothing really behind it all. It is simply a random course of events, and any order, however fixed or understood it might be, is really a coincidence. In fact, according to these types, everything is just a coincidence. The God people could also accept the laws of nature, but they would say the opposite of the randoms, that those rules were put there by God for a very specific purpose. There might be things that appear to be a coincidence, but that is really a clever disguise for some part of God's great plan. The nature people, it would seem, could go either way. They could accept God or they could opt for randomness, but they really accept neither, since they tend to think that anything outside of the laws of nature is not really worth considering at all in the discussion. It is a good bet that some version of these three general outlooks on life have been around for as long as human beings have had the time and the wherewithal to think about what makes the world go round. While randomness might strike us as a radical way of viewing the apparent order of the world, for people who had very little control over what happened to them, it certainly would have seemed to be a very real possibility. We tend to think that all ancient people believed in some form of a higher power, whether it was one god or many gods. But this is really only a reflection of the fact that religious beliefs were the ones that tended to be written down, whereas mavericks like randomness might have merely simmered in the minds of people who saw no justification in believing that a higher power was running things. The laws of nature, as they are currently stood, may be a product of modern thinking, but they also have been around in one form or another for as long as people have wondered about how things work. It is interesting that these three approaches to life are found in one way or another in the classical biblical outlook. The God approach, of course, is all over the Bible. It is probably the primary subject of the Torah, although there are many sections that ignore God altogether. The laws of nature approach is simply another biblical way of looking at God. The creation story is completely told as if it were laying out the rules of nature. There are no scientific theories or equations, but the rules are there nevertheless. Creation itself is the Big Bang in biblical terms. The fixed nature of living things and the unpredictability of human nature are also built into the story, especially when it moves into the Garden of Eden. Randomness is harder to find in the Bible, but it is there. It underlies any situation in which the things tend to get out of hand. It is always waiting in the wings for whenever God or human nature would relinquish control. The idea of God in the Bible itself could be seen as a manifestation of two of these forms of control. There are two primary names for God in the Torah, a fact that escapes the notice of those who don't read the text in Hebrew. These two names are, on the one hand, Elohim, the power that guided the creation story and much of what happens after, and what Jews call Hashem, meaning the name, a specific biblical four-letter name for the God who interacts with people throughout the book. The first, Elohim, is really what is frequently called fate, which is an ancient way of describing the laws of nature. The other name, Hashem, is everything else, from the power of free will to the reality of possibility that reaches beyond whatever is encompassed by fate. The interaction and occasional conflict between these divine powers is the primary theme of the Bible. This week's parsha is called Chayei Sara. This is a two-word title, which means the life of Sarah, the wife of Abraham. It is somewhat ironic that the parsha with this name really does not discuss Sarah's life at all. In fact, the only thing it does discuss about her is her death. The only thing it mentions about Sarah's life is that she lived for 127 years. This is all in the very first verse. But the very next verse gets right into her death, stating that she died in Kiryat Arba, which was another name for the ancient city of Hebron in the land of Canaan. The rest of the first section of the Parsha deals with Abraham negotiating with certain local people, including a man named Ephron, over the price for a burial cave for his wife. This takes a surprisingly long time for what seems like a simple thing. The Torah seems to want to go to great extremes to establish that Abraham did indeed purchase this cave legitimately, and that it would be in the possession of his descendants forever. It happens that not only Sarah and Abraham, but their son Isaac and his wife Rebekah, and their grandson Jacob and one of his wives Leah were also buried in this cave. This cave has formed as solid a place in Jewish and Israelite tradition as just about anything. The bulk of the rest of the Parsha is taken up by one very long story in which not all that much seems to happen. This is the story of Abraham ordering his servant Eliezer to travel back to their homeland in Mesopotamia to find a wife for Isaac. Abraham makes Eliezer take an oath that he would not find a wife from among the girls of Canaan. He was specifically forsworn that the girl should be from Abraham's own family and nowhere else. Eliezer also promises to bring the girl that he finds back to Canaan and not arrange things so that Isaac must leave Canaan and settle in Mesopotamia. This was serious business. The destiny of the Israelites, who didn't yet exist, was dependent upon it. The long journey is hardly mentioned, either going there or returning. What takes up much of the time is the way Eliezer arrives at a certain well in what he knew to be Abraham's hometown and begins to pray that he be successful in his mission, and then how Rebekah immediately arrives and destiny is set in motion. This is one of the relatively few examples, and certainly the longest, of prayer in the Torah. He prays that, quote, Hashem, the God of my master Abraham, let it please happen before me today, and do kindness with my master Abraham. He then requests that, quote, the girl to whom I asked to tilt your jug so that I may drink, and she says, drink, and also I will give water to your camels. She is the one to whom you have destined for your servant, for Isaac, and in her I shall know that you have done kindness with my master. The Torah states that before he finished speaking, Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the nephew of Abraham, came out with the jug on her shoulder. The scene unfolded almost exactly as Eliezer had requested. It is described in surprisingly detailed terms for the Bible, complete with the entire dialogue about the jug and the water and the camels. But in the end, Eliezer is stunned to find that things are turning out almost exactly as he prayed for. When she finally finishes with watering all the camels, he asks her who she is. When she tells him that she is none other than the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Abraham's brother, Eliezer's reaction is to bow to the ground to Hashem. He then follows his original prayer with the brief prayer of thanks. Quote, blessed is Hashem, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken kindness and truth from my master. I am on the road, and Hashem led me to the house of the brother of my master. The rest of the story consists of Eliezer cementing the details with Rebekah's family and then setting out with her back to Canaan. There is a rather long retelling of the events by the well, but essentially nothing new happens. They travel back without incident and meet up with Isaac when they arrive at a certain well in the southern part of Canaan. Isaac spots them, and Rebekah prepares herself to meet her future husband. The actual marriage takes up only a single verse, only mentioning that he brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and she became his wife, and he loved her and was comforted over the loss of his mother. It is interesting that Eliezer, who is the main subject of this parsha, was so insistent in his prayer that things worked out exactly as he requested. As soon as he arrives at the well, he wants things to start happening. He doesn't even look for a place to sleep or for some food. He doesn't ask any of the locals where he might find Abraham's long-estranged family or how he might go about finding a wife for Isaac, which was the purpose of his journey. Instead, he does nothing but pray. He doesn't even bother getting his own water from the well. He insists that this be an essential aspect of how he will see destiny unfolding right before his eyes. Why did he demand all this from Hashem? Why didn't he try to do any of this himself? Was he asking for a miracle, or was he asking for destiny to show its cards? Or perhaps a little of both. It is difficult to know what to make of all this because it runs so contrary to the way we might do things today. Would we insist that the first girl who shows up at the well prove herself to be the one destined to be the wife of his master's son? Would we leave so much in the hands of fate or under the questionable power of miracles? Probably not. But then again, we are not being written about in the Bible. This story, however one reads it, is a story of the interaction of fate and Hashem. Eliezer wanted Hashem to make things happen the way they did, but he also wanted that to be the way destiny had already been set up. Rebekah was meant to be Isaac's wife. It was simply a matter of things playing out the way that they had to. There had to be this oath and this well and the camels, and Eliezer had to evoke the power of Hashem to intervene and make it happen right at that moment. But destiny was calling the shots every step of the way. There was nothing random about any of this. This perhaps is the way things happen in our lives. Even with all the scientific understanding of the laws of nature, we still have to admit that it all boils down to a sophisticated version of fate. But behind all that, or mixed in with all that, rides the hidden hand of Hashem, making things happen when they do, because that is when they need to happen. There may be random events in the world which cloud the glorious and orderly way things are supposed to happen, but they do not negate the fact that interwoven within it is a power greater than anything randomness has in its pocket. Destiny and whatever is divinely possible outside of destiny is the ultimate guide of reality. Shabbat Shalom.